Today we have Ashley Borden on the podcast. We'd basically be here all day naming her list of achievements, but here are some of them. So Ashley is an internationally trusted master trainer and body transformation expert with over 45,000 hours of experience. Her client list has included celebrities such as Christina Aguilera, Ryan Gosling, Mandy Moore, Shaka Khan, Chelsea Handler, Tayo Cruz, Tori Spelling, Lena Headey, Savannah Chrisley, and pro athlete champions in numerous sports and many others. Ashley has been featured on media outlets like The Today Show, The Kelly Clarkson Show, Good Morning America, The Doctors, CNBC, MTV, Self, The Zoe Report, Vogue, VH1, Discovery Health, Bazaar, among many others. She was also a regular trainer on the TV show Revenge Body with Khloe Kardashian. Ashley has numerous partnerships with companies such as Nike, Reebok, Microsoft, Infinity, Lady Foot Locker, and a host of others. She also co-authored the book Your Perfect Fit in 2007. Ashley also co-hosts the podcast Kimchi and Hala with Elaine Sir. She also does business coaching for other personal trainers and has written many successful fitness programs. There's certainly plenty of things we're probably missing here, but I think you get the point that Ashley has been a force in the fitness industry for a long time. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Luke. What an intro. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
For sure. And everything that we said is very true. And, you've obviously been in the fitness space for a long time. So a lot of people look at you now and be like, wow, she's trained all these celebrities and she's achieved all this success in the fitness industry. But, every single story and every single journey has a starting point. And we'd like to share that story today. So I know for you, growing up, things weren't always, perfect. So, you weren't always this, super fit, strong person who you are today. So let's go through from the beginning. What were things like for you growing up and how did you get into fitness?
Okay, let me lay down on my therapist couch for a second and then I'll just tell you the whole story. I think also being in Instagram, right, and being on social media, everybody thinks that everybody started their career when Instagram started. You know what I mean? Everyone's like on the same playing field in that way. I mean, I have been, in this industry for decades, a very long time. But really, I've always been interested. I've always been in fitness and health. I've been around it. I grew up literally in a health food store. My mother had a health food store that was called Borden's Vitamin B. This is like way before health food was, a thing in the 80s. And I resented it and hated every minute of it because, while everybody else had like a white bread with bologna sandwich, I had 20 grain bread with like natural peanut butter and jelly. And my sandwich weighed like 45 pounds and I just had carob and sprouts and I really resented it. But that, I wouldn't say that growing up in a health food store was what cultivated an eating disorder for me. I mean, I think it's not necessarily the food. I think it's more what's happening. My dad was also very much into fitness. He started sporting goods stores and brought the USTS triathlon to Chicago. And he was very, very into fitness also. And my dad died when I was 13. He had cancer and died at 13. And my mother got remarried, all that. But for me, being around fitness, I was a dancer. So I grew up dancing. And that's fitness too, but it's very different than lifting weights, very different connection to your body. So I really struggled when I was younger with fitness, like fitness stuff. Like my brother was super athletic. He played football and he could go bowling. He had good eye-hand coordination. I had terrible eye-hand coordination. And I really grew up with a dad that was like super impatient with me, super impatient, found it very almost embarrassing that I was so uncoordinated with fitness. There was a lot of shame around it with me growing up with fitness. I like I said, I grew up in this athletic family, but I didn't feel athletic, but nobody ever spent the time to fucking teach me. Do you know what I mean? It was more like, this is how you play tennis. And then throw the tennis racket and we would leave. Or, like you can't run or, whatever it was. But nobody ever taught me how to do it, right? So I think subconsciously, this was my thing always was like, I'm going to help other people have this connection. And I'm going to help other people not ever feel shameful for not understanding how to connect to their body and not understanding how to do something. I mean, I'm giving you, could be the longest story ever, but I'll fast forward. I moved to LA when I think I was 20 or 19 or one or the other. I went to treatment. I'm skipping something. I went to treatment, completely hit a rock bottom with the raging eating disorders when I was in high school, hit bottom, went to treatment center at 18. And it was a 12-step treatment center. So I got out of that and I was like, okay, I know what my mission is in life.
And can I actually pause you for a second there? You mind
do.
diving into that story a little bit? So how did you develop an eating disorder?
Well, it's like with any, so eating disorders in themselves, right, are not necessarily food related at all, right? Generally, it can come from control, lack of control, body image stuff. Now, when my eating disorder was developing, it wasn't because I was like, oh my God, I'm fat. I actually never even looked at my body. It wasn't anything about my body at the time. I mean, it started when I was around 7 or 8, my eating disorder, where I was controlling my food, but I was controlling my food because goes back to my father. I wanted him to be like, wow, you really, like, I was like, oh, I'm not going to eat any pizza. I was like, I'm only going to eat really healthy food. Well, I don't even know what I was thinking, but I just wanted acknowledgement. I mean, we're just going to get into a full therapy session here, but I wanted acknowledgement, I think, from both of my parents that like, oh my gosh, you're eating really well. And look what you're doing in this subconscious way. And this way I was eating and obsessively focusing on food starting at 8, started developing into more and more of this dysmorphia until I got into high school. And then when I got into high school, I was already like going to the gym and dancing and lifting. And I was very athletic, but I wasn't into my body. But when I got into high school and people were like noticing my body, it just threw me. I was like, wait, what? Because it was like, I would be performing and doing dance stuff and people would be talking about my body. I mean, this sounds obnoxious, but this is high school, right? And it was like, and I didn't know how they're like, how I got this body or whatever that means. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, I guess what I should just do is not eat. Because, in high school, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I was like, oh, I'm just not going to eat anything so I can keep my body. And it just developed this fucked up, just everything. I mean, it was like I couldn't focus in school. I was living on popcorn and coffee. What? I mean, like the worst thing you could do to your stomach was awful. So that's when I hit bottom because I couldn't function. At 18 with all this, I barely graduated high school because I was so miserable. And this was also dealing with, my dad was very sick. He had cancer. He died when I was 13. My mother got remarried, blah, blah, blah. I think on all the stuff that was also kind of displacing it with the eating disorder stuff. So at 18, I think it was 18, I went into treatment. So I went into a treatment center that was like a month and a half or 2-month treatment center in Chicago that is no longer there. It's called Parkside. It was part of a hospital. And it was the beginning of like a completely different life for me because it was like, I went to treatment. I was in there. I was like, I learned, I kind of like learned how to parent myself and like reparent myself when I was in there. And I had all these realizations, which to this day has to do with the way I train with people. All these lessons of like, there's going to be people who don't like you. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry, what? Excuse me, what? There's people who don't like me for what? I mean, I was 18. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like these things I had never even, there's a woman in treatment. She was like, I don't like you. I'm like, what? Like, it was just like this quick life lesson of everything. And like, people were like, you're just in here because you want people to tell you you're skinny. And I'm like, well, you're in here because you can't stop eating. And it would just start this whole thing. And then that was where I really learned about my eating disorder is the exact same eating disorder as somebody who is obese, except for I'm not carrying my toilet around with my bulimia. They're carrying their eating disorder around that you can see it all the time. I mean, I can really feel it with other people and I can see it. But it was just a really incredible learning experience for me to also be in treatment. When I got out of treatment, that's when my life started. I mean, that's when I went into 12-step program, an Overeaters Anonymous, which is for anorexia, bulimia, compulsive overeating, compulsive exercise, you name it. So it's 12-step. It's how I started my recovery. And then I was like, I'm going to move to LA. Now, meanwhile, this is before social media. And I had extended family that lived out here, which then I realized later that they're not really my family. But that's a whole other story, right? Because I moved out here and I was like, well, I have family out here that'll be there with me. Completely, totally abandoned me. And I was like, okay, so I guess I'm on my own in LA.
Wow.
So I've just been really a lone wolf for a very long time. Lone wolf meaning like I figure shit out. Do you know what I mean? I will figure it out. I will figure it out. I will create my own support system, my own structure of the guidance that I need, of people, of everything, you know? So anyway, it's been talking for so long, but that is a big part of that's the, when I got to LA, I was like, now I'm in LA and I've already hit bottom at 18. So it wasn't like I came to LA and I was like fresh to just do the worst decisions ever. I really had a good, because I had this 12-step background with me, I brought it with me here in LA, and I never went to the dark side. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I
So,
always had a really good perspective.
right. I mean, a lot to unpack there. Obviously, you went through a lot at an early age dealing, with your father and, some of the disappointment you felt with him early on. And then obviously him, passing away and, some of the other challenges that you had in high school with the eating and just, feelings about yourself in general. What was like the biggest thing that you learned maybe in that treatment program that you still kind of like carry with you to this day that's kind of helped you both personally and with helping others?
Oh, I mean, God, there's so much, right? I mean, the not to be some weird 12-step person if you're not familiar with it, but the keeping your side of the street clean, right? Because the reason that most people disintegrate and crumble is shame and not cleaning your side of the street, right? So carrying shame is destruction. So this is also why I'm also very, I talk about a lot of stuff because I don't hold a lot of shame and all of that, and I think releasing it is very healthy. So keeping my side of the street clean, I would say that is number one. Number one, I have incredible boundaries, which is, over time I've learned and learned and learned. But, that was something I really learned when I was in treatment, was about boundaries and keeping your side of the street clean. And, I think that's the biggest thing, is that you just is being an authentic, good person. I mean, I didn't have to go to treatment to be a good person. My internal clock is not, I mean, I think we know if we're like off kilter or not, but really for me, it was really about not everyone's going to like you. That's also a really big thing. And I think that's a lot of freedom, and it's okay. I mean, this is not, I think people with social media and everything now too, is that they think everybody, all the likes, everybody has to like you or they don't like you, and this was happening before social media, that some people like you, some people won't like you. And it's like, that's okay. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that are your people. So that was also really, I think, good message for me, is like, I'm, not everybody's going to like you. And it was a rude awakening that I had when I was younger, because I was like, what? You know what I mean? Like, I had no idea. I was like, I thought everybody liked me.
Right.
Because I also grew up, it's very interesting. I also grew up, the message that I had from my mother was terrible. Her messaging to me was, well, they're just jealous of you. They're just, now I grew up with a covert narcissist mother, which is a whole nother fascinating subject of narcissism. I'm obsessed with psychology and narcissistic abuse and covert narcissistic stuff. It's amazing. But my mother grew up always saying, they're just jealous of you. They're just jealous of you. Well, they're just jealous of you. It's a horrible message to tell your children that, because that is actually not what's going on, at all. And thank God I was not like, oh, they're just jealous of me. I was like, what? So it took me, I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own, because a lot of the messaging I was getting at home, none of this was like helping me. You know what I mean? None of this was like constructive, healthy. It was either panic or like, well, they're just jealous of you, and it was like, so the self-parenting that went on for me growing up really had to do with like great therapists in treatment and program and 12-step program and, my sponsors and all that kind of stuff. That's what really, I feel like, did like the real healthy raising of my mind and being a better person in that way, and accountability and, all that. So I tell people Mother's Day is coming up, and I always feel sad for people who, maybe have like that terrible parents, or, a mother that is not present, and I very much do a self-parenting, and I think what's really important that people know is that you can find the people to guide you. And I mean, even if you have a parent that maybe guides you in one area, you can find other guides of people who you trust that are wonderful guides that can guide you through life also, and I have a I have a good handful of those people that, I trust, and they've been my guides. And so I think that's a really good message for people also to know, is that, yes, your parents can be great if you are, if you won the lottery and you have a great parent lottery, but if you don't, you can still create the kind of guidance that you need. You got to look for it, and you got to find that guidance. And I've always been like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, a lot of personal development went on at that point, a lot of lessons that you learned in your life. So at this point, you then, like you said, you moved to LA. So what happened next once you got in LA?
So I moved to LA. I was working as like a receptionist when I first moved here. And then I was actually working in the, what do you call it? The Die Hard building where they filmed Die Hard. But I wanted to train, but at the time when I came here, I had this other job, and I was like, okay, at least I need to make some money. And I was like, I did not understand, I just didn't understand like LA and how it worked. I was like 50 miles away from my other job. I was like driving, I didn't get it. And then when I wanted to start getting into training, I was going to Golds. That's where I was working out. And I was dating a guy who was a trainer, and didn't go to college, did not know this could be a career. What do I know? And again, this was also in early 90s, everybody. I mean, this was a while ago. And I remember his name was Roy, and he had clients, and I was like, well, hold on a second. What goes on here? He's like, yeah, they pay me 10 sessions up front. I was like, what? I was like,
Crazy.
I was like, this is insane. I remember there was another trainer at Gold's, and I remember he made, I'll never forget, he made $110 an hour. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was like, somebody is paying you $110 an hour to train. And he was like, yeah, but I remember he was a great trainer. He'd been training for a long time. And I was like, what is this world? So the way that I got my first client was I would, at my gym, I only trained women. So I didn't know anything. I really did not know how to train a man. I don't even know if I even knew what I was doing when I was training, other than training myself. And I used to wear a half shirt with my abs. So I always had like a six pack, right? So I'd walk around the gym in that, and then women would ask me like, how'd you get your abs like that? And then I was like, well, I can help you. And this is back in the day, how, you would kind of word of mouth. And then I had one client, her name was Julie. She was a hairdresser. We bartered. And this is how I learned about boundaries, because I didn't make any. And I was like, okay, well, I'll barter, and you cut my hair, and I'll. She lost 14 pounds and didn't get me one client. But I didn't understand how it worked. So it was like you have to just get in there and start doing shit. Here's the problem. I want to tell you, you have to just do it. You know what I mean? Do it wrong. Do it. My business mentor, Jill Coleman, always says, just throw the shit up there and just start it. You know what I mean? Like you have to start. Even, I mean, training is different than if you're posting something on social media, because you're dealing with people's bodies and you could kill them and paralyze them. So of course you want to be prepared to do that. But even if you have never trained someone and you're like, you have to start. You have to get your hands on people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You have to. You cannot be a good trainer if you've never had your hands on people. You are not a trainer if you're only training online and you've never had your hands on anybody but yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't.
Yeah, and as someone who, I was an in-person trainer for 8 years before becoming a, full-time online coach. And yeah, I can definitely say that, from a strength standpoint, understanding people's mindsets and philosophies, it can definitely help to have, train probably, we probably trained close to 2,000 people in person before, ever coaching online. And it definitely does make a difference.
How can you, I'm going to tell you, how can you cue first of all, if you can't cue somebody in person, good luck knowing how to train somebody, cue them online. I mean, that is my wheelhouse. I am an excellent cuer. I am an excellent trainer, right? But it's taken me decades to feel like I'm like, yeah, I am. But I'm also learning. Like, I'm also not some asshole that's like, yeah, I know everything. I'm the first person that'd be like, I don't know, let me ask Luke what he thinks. Like, if I respect somebody else and there's something that I might not know, or it's not my wheelhouse, ask another expert who might know. You know what I mean? But you have to have trained people in person before you can take everything online.
For sure. So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I resonate with that. So basically you started by, like you said, just not really necessarily knowing what you're doing, just kind of, walking around, kind of showing off the abs, and people wanted you to train them.
But also, look, this is how I say it. I kind of learned, like, I was in like, on like the, what do you call it? Like, I was in like the prison yard at Gold's, because it was no women trainers when I was there. It was all men. And it was just like a vicious coaching people left and right and I mean, this was like, so, in the early, like I said, early 90s. But I worked, I'm a hard worker. So I worked my ass off, and I did not say no to work. And I trained as much as I possibly could. And I burnt myself out, right? In the very beginning, I never said no. So I would train 15 hours a day. I didn't care. I was like, oh my God, because I lived in scarcity, right? I was like, what if I say no? No one will ever come back to me. What if I set a boundary? They're going to go away. What if I ask for more money? They'll never want to train with me again. So I used to live in this panicked scarcity of, my nervous system was shot constantly, because I was like, starting at 6 a.m., ending at 9 p.m., never training myself anymore, because who had time, and then I finally hit a wall. And that was 10 years into training. I hit a wall. 10 years of training like that, right? And then I'm sorry. It was almost my 10th year, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to change and go to another gym. And when I went to another gym, that was after like 5 years, and people went with me, I was like, well, hold on a second. People are going to follow me? Like, it's like these moments, right, where you're like, oh, maybe I'm doing something right. Because like, some people left the gym and they went with me to this other gym. And then I was like, wait a minute. Because, I was driving everywhere. I was like, driving full speed ahead to this person and full speed ahead to this person, almost dying on the street, then going back to Gold's and doing this, and just, working, just a maniac, you know what I mean? And finally, when I got into the smaller gym, people were coming to me. I was like, oh, this is better. It's been like phases all along the way, right? Of this stuff, of different iterations of what my business looked like. So I was at another gym for years, right? Working, training, working, no celebrities or anything, just working, training everybody, right? Everybody under the sun. Then I went to another gym, and I, went to another gym. Every gym I would go to, there would usually be a male in a gym that I was I was learning how to be more diplomatic, but I was also, very bossy, and it was very off-putting to men that didn't like women. And there was always these issues, and I got better at being a better communicator, understand that as time went on. But anyway, then I ended up at a gym where this Rosie Perez happened to be there, and I did a session with her, teaching her Pilates, doing Rosie. I don't even know if Rosie even remembers that, but it was like, I think I trained her like 2 or 3 times at this gym.
And how many years into your career was this?
Well, I must have still been in my 20s. So it was within maybe, within the 10 years of when I started, I think, probably about.
So either way, it like for people listening, she didn't just immediately start training celebrities, right? You had to build up to that with all the hours that she was putting in.
Oh, yeah. But also, here's the other thing. No celebrity person at that level, right? They can smell it. If you're not professional and you're not confident in what you're doing, then who wants to work with that? I mean, whether you're a celebrity or not, right? It's also very much a word of mouth thing. But I was at this gym where, like I said, there's other trainers who had other celebrities, and they were training, and they would come to the smaller boutique gym. I remember at the time, Monica Lewinsky came to this gym, and one of the trainers at my gym called the National Enquirer at the time, and they came and took, it was like such a crazy time, because I guess that was maybe there was during Bill Clinton. But anyway, then it just became word of mouth. Now, this is a great lesson that I always tell people, that this is like how I kept on kind of moving up with who I was training. I have always been friendly with everybody I work with, right? I say good morning, I say hi, even if they're not my vibe, or like we're not friends, like I'm still friendly. Like, we work when you work in a gym, you gotta have a good energy, especially it's just working amongst other people, and there was a guy who I used to work with, and I would just always say hi to him, friendly. He was a huge bodybuilder dude, and we weren't friendly. We were just friendly. And everybody used to be kind of make fun of him, because he was kind of like a New York kind of like beefcake guy at the time. And I just thought he was nice, and I always said hi. And then one day he came up to me and he said, hey, by the way, I train this guy. I don't train him here. I train him at his house, and he is looking for a trainer for his client. would you be open to coming and interviewing? And I was like, sure. Thank you for the offer. And so he's like, all right, his name is Irving Azoff. His client's name is Christina Aguilera. And I was like, oh, all right. Okay. He trained Irving, right? So he trained Irving. So I went and I interviewed with Irving, and he interviewed me, and he was like, okay, you're hired. So I was like, okay. And so I had other people in between Christina, but Christina was, probably the biggest turn of all these things. But again, I was ready to train her. I mean, I'd already, this is like years of stuff that I've been doing, and I kind of skipped a bunch in between. But so when I went to, right, I started training her, right? And I think she was like 19 at the time. She was still a teenager. And I trained her for about almost 4 years on and off. And it was a very huge learning experience for me. And she was a great client, and I learned a lot. I have a lot of respect for her in that way, because I learned a lot working with her. And that changed everything for me. Because at the time, by the way, you can, I'll keep on with my monologue.
Yeah. No, keep on going. I mean, this is great. Like you said, I mean, you kind of created your own opportunity from just, connecting, talking to other people, not putting yourself out there, but then, opportunity came to you because you put in the work, you had the work ethic, and you had the, people skills to be able to network properly. And then eventually that led to, your first kind of bigger time celebrity client, which was Christina Aguilera.
Right. And I had trained other people, right, in between then. But I remember at the time, I mean, I didn't know anything about how this worked. And I was at my gym, and I remember I was looking on the wall, and there was like, they had all these articles in like picture frames at this gym. And I was like, wait, how did this gym get in a magazine? This is again in the 90s, right? And they were like, we have a publicist. And I'm like, what? They were like, yeah, we have a publicist. And I was like, wait, do these other trainers have publicists? And I think at the time, I think they said that Gunnar Peterson had a publicist or something. And I'm friends with Gunnar. But back then I was like, what? My brain exploded, right? I had never heard of this in my life. So I was like, well, I need a publicist. I was like, I need a publicist, right? I don't know anything about anything. So I go to the Harris Shepherd Public Relations, and I had pictures taken in like lucite heels, in like, I don't even know what was going on. And I go to a meeting with them, and I'm like, I need a publicist. And I have this, I'm training Christina and these other people that I'm working with. And they were like, okay, it's going to be, I think it was like $3,000 a month. And then I had another heart. I keeled over and died in the office. I was like, what? Like, I just never, I was like, what? Broke and struggling. And I was like, so then I was like, how am I going to do this? And then I had this revelation. I was like, oh, I know how I'm going to do this. My grandmother at the time, when you would get married and have a child with her when she was alive, she at the time would give you $30,000 as a gift that you had children, right? Now, I knew even back then, I'm like, I'm not having any children. I want to see if I could pitch her to give me those $30,000 over a period of time to help me pay for my PR for 10 months, right? Or whatever it was. And so I did a whole pitch meeting to my grandma. I like explained it all. I laid it out to her. I explained what a publicist was, my career, what I was doing. And I had to tell her, and then her, whatever, the other person that was doing her money. And then they said, okay. And I was like, oh, what? So she paid for this for me with this publicist for, I think it was like 10 months or something. And I'll tell you the best lesson I had when I was learning this, and this is for anybody. I used to be very unreliable, pretty unreliable. Like I'm a hedonist, right? At heart, like at heart, I am not at all like this anymore, but at heart, I'm unorganized. I just want to be at Burning Man. You know what I mean? I just like would love to just, take THC all day long and just like roll out on my roller and be with my dogs. You know what I mean? Like I'm a hedonist, right? So I was not the way I am now. And I was getting calls from editors that wanted to do interviews. And they would call, and I would be like, all right, I'll call them back whenever. And my publicist, Dana, at the time, I'll never forget this. She called me and she said to me, so I'm going to tell you something. You have missed a call with 2 editors, and I want you to know that editors never forget. And they will move from magazine to magazine, and they won't call you ever again. And you know what your reputation is going to be? That you are unreliable. And that's going to be your reputation, and no one's going to call you. I was like,
Wow.
what? And from that moment on, I will tell you, Luke, my reputation, I respond immediately to everybody about everything. I am known as the person, you ask anybody, they're like, oh my gosh, she responded to me right away. I don't give a shit. I will respond to you. A, part of it is I don't want to forget. B, because I don't want to forget. So, but I am an immediate responder and communicator. And Dana, it was the best lesson that Dana had ever taught me, because I didn't take it seriously, at the time. So these lessons just along the way, that's what I'm saying, have made me into a better and better business person, a better, more confident business person, working with anybody, training with Christina, touring with her and doing this and being around other people. You have to be able to work in a fucking group of people. If you can't work in a group, don't work with celebrities. If you can't manage yourself with a manager, an assistant, other people giving information, it's never just you two. There's always other people, because I've worked with other trainers that can't do it. They're like, I don't need somebody else to tell me what to do. And I'm like, listen, asshole, it's called her assistant. You actually should be giving the assistant all the respect. Like, that's how it works. You know what I mean? Like, it's this 30,000 view of your business and yourself is what I tell all trainers and anyone in business. You need to have a huge overview of what you're doing. You need to not, your view should not be just your front door. Your view should be of the whole city, of what you're looking at, of every opportunity of what's going on. I am the most strategic person that there is. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Now, I wasn't in my 20s.
Sure.
In my 20s, that's what I mean. In my 20s, I was just like, I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this.
All
I'll
over
do
the
this.
place.
I'll do this. Yeah. There was no strategy to anything I was doing, because I didn't have any like overall goals. You know what I mean?
Right. So, I mean, obviously, like you said, you started training Christina, and then, you started getting more and more opportunities. You hired the publicist, obviously got in a lot of shows. So, from here, you obviously continued to grow in your reputation to the point where you also were a regular on a show with Khloe Kardashian, Revenge Body. So how did that opportunity come about?
So, I mean, I've done a ton of TV and radio and stuff over the years, right? And here's the thing. When you do something like a transformation show, right? And by the way, the show is excellent. People so disparaged at the beginning. They're like, oh, I'm sure it's just because of the name at first. And I'm like, you obviously have never watched the show, because it was an excellent, I mean, I think Khloe did such a good job, and so did the whole production on the show. But so again, I've been in LA, been doing all the things. It's like there's a usual suspects of group that go in to read, audition, to do things, because just because you're a trainer, it doesn't matter, right? Here's what you need to be able to do if you want to be on television, you want to take what you're doing. You need to be able to work with other people. Let's start with that, okay? You need to be able to listen. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to understand how to be on camera. You need to be able to get results, because if you don't, they won't put your episode on. You need to be able to work with other people. Let me say that again. And again, have a bigger overview of what's going on in the bigger picture of things. I can get to that whole thing. But so the same thing, right? It was a call of like, they were looking for trainers. So but I will tell you what, Luke, I will tell you what about Revenge Body. And this is the truth to anybody out there who is ready to just be their authentic self. At the time when I went into this interview, I was like, you know what? I've been doing this for 4,000 years. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say exactly what I feel. Because I did used to try to make things more like what I think people wanted to hear. And then I'll never forget. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to say exactly what I feel. So I sat down in the interview with Larissa, and she was our executive producer, and they interviewed me, and I said exactly what it was, how I felt, what my opinion was. They'll ask you like, how do you work with other people? How do you get results? Because that's a big thing. And Revenge Body is great because they said, great, after they interviewed you and you were clear and you did all this stuff, they were like, okay, do your magic. Like, we got to use whatever we wanted, our methods of what we did with other people. So you could actually see, you know, how it turned out, maybe with like a dance instructor versus like strength conditioning versus like, I don't know what some other stuff was, but like, you know, like Pilates-ish stuff or whatever. So it was very interesting to see how people changed and like who kept it off and all that. So that's how that, right. So we interviewed and then they said, okay, great, you're hired. You know, we want to work with you and you're going to be on it. So I did 2 seasons of that, right? There's like 5 other trainers that have stories that are going on at the same time. But again, with those shows, right? If you're doing it and your person quits, because it's hard because you can't control somebody. You can't be like, don't make me look bad. But that's basically what, you know, you're like, you don't want them to fail because it'll look like you're failing. So there's so much psychological stuff behind having these people change, right? And find their self-worth and like want to do this and show up for themselves. And I love doing that. And that is my wheelhouse. So you know, but it's a lot. It's a lot. I I spent over 100 hours training these people myself. I like literally was like sleeping at the foot of their bed. I found out other trainers on the show had assistants training these fucking people. Excuse my mouth. Excuse my mouth.
Yeah.
I would never. I would be like, you know, I would never because I'm a control freak. But you know, they were allowed to. You could do whatever you want. So that's what was great about the show. You know, I think it was a great opportunity, and all my people still are doing great.
Awesome. Well, like you said, you let opportunity happen from you just being authentically yourself, not holding back. And that's one thing I can definitely tell about you as well. And one thing that we had briefly talked about before we started recording here was something I heard you say on another interview is that whenever you train someone, you basically tell them that they cannot say negative things about themselves. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing I do with our group right now that we're running with Elite, this online group that we're doing. It's the same thing, right? Like the rule that we put in our Facebook group is that they are not allowed to shit talk and say negative stuff about it, or they will get no feedback. Their post will just be empty. There will be no comments on it or anything. So it's the same thing in person when I used to do in person. Because here's the thing, people back in the day, you know, and also I don't work with, you could say I don't have a mirror here, but I used to work for decades. I worked in front of a mirror, which was a nightmare, right? So it would be mostly females would be like, you know, doing a bicep curl and they'd be like, I need to go get some more Botox. I do not like, and I'm like, we're in the middle of a chest press. What do you, or, you know, they'd be doing something and be like, ugh, I hate this, whatever it is. And so for me, what I finally said is I would have a new client that would come in and I'd be like, hi, Luke, so nice, you know, welcome, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd be like, so what is like the thing that you cannot stand doing? And you might be like, oh, push-ups are the worst. I can't stand them. I'm like, okay, perfect. So here's the deal. And I have it written on the board too. And there's like a, you know, check mark thing. And I'm like, anytime in this session that you say anything negative about yourself, that's 5 push-ups. So I'm going to keep track and tack them on. And at the end of the workout, you'll do all these push-ups. And you might be like, I can only do 1. And I'm like, great, we'll be here for 20 minutes till you're done. And then they're always like, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm totally serious. And then that changes everything because I'm really nice and I'm great, but I'm not joking. So I'm very much 2 people. You know, I'm super, you know, I'm like, right? But then I'm also like, it's like, this is not a game, you know?
Right.
So they learn very quickly that I'm not joking. And so here's what I say, I'm like, look, you're coming here to work out for an hour, 60 minutes to take care of yourself. Talking shit about yourself in these 60 minutes does absolutely nothing to get you better in your workout. So here's what I want you to do. Sit in your car, take out your journal, write everything that you feel about yourself before you come into the gym, or call your friend and tell them everything. You come in the gym, you say nothing negative. You can get back in your car, talk all the shit you want about yourself when you get back into the car, but we're not doing it in the gym. And it doesn't help. You know?
I absolutely love that. And I think that is something that is super important. It isn't talked about enough, that people just focus on the exercise. They just focus on the nutrition, but they don't focus on people's self-talk, because when you say negative things about yourself, even those little micro things throughout the day, like that can really change your beliefs about who you are and what you feel like you are capable of as well.
Oh, 100%. If you're like, I'm weak, like people who are like, if somebody in our group is like, right, doing a push-up, and like, I can't do push-ups. I'm like, actually, let's rephrase this. Actually, you are doing push-ups. You're getting stronger at them. That is what the verbiage is, because you just did 1.5. So you can do a push-up. We're just getting stronger at them. You know what I mean? And that, I mean, look, I was like, are you kidding me? I was like the queen of negative self-talk when I was as a teenager in my early 20s, or as a teenager, every day I was like, oh my God, am I fat? Do I look fat? Do you think I'm fat? Do you think I look fat? Does somebody look fat? Am I fat? Does it look fat? Am I look fat? I'm not joking, Luke. I was a lunatic, right? None of that helps. And so when I say to somebody, if you said to me, do I look fat? You know what I would say to you? I'd say, first of all, I'm not going to participate in that kind of conversation. So tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on. And then they're like, what I mean? Generally there's something going on, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's what I say. I'm like, I'm not going to participate in that kind of conversation. So tell me, what are you feeling? What's going on? They might be, oh, I'm not feeling in my body right now, or I'm feeling whatever. And I'm like, are you feeling disconnected from your body? And they're like, yeah. This is why foam rolling to me is so healing for so many people, especially women, because it connects you to your body in a way that you're able to kind of heal yourself and feel your body and reintroduce yourself to your body with foam rolling, more so than even weightlifting and all that, because there's so much stuff that goes into weightlifting. I started this group. We just started our 16-week group, and I do a lot of talking with people beforehand and on the phone right before they started doing this commitment to this 5 days a week online thing. And one of the women who's in the group, she texted me and she was like, I'm so ashamed. I feel so ashamed at how I look when I post these videos and where I am, because I used to be so perfect. She's on a soap opera. And I was like, first of all, what is perfect? Like what is there's no such thing as perfect, because what is perfect, right? It's all subjective for us, right? And then I said, the world is so hard as it is, and then you hate yourself on top of it. Like your poor body, your body's like, can I just try to get stronger? And you are so mean to me. You're so mean to your body. You say so many negative things to your body. You're so mean to it. You say all these mean things and you're like, why aren't you showing up for me? It's like, what? Would you do that to a child? You know what I mean? Say all these horrible things to them and then be like, now you're going to perform and show up for me. So, sometimes it's like separate yourself, and, your body is this other thing that you're trying to separate from. I tell a lot of women, I'm like, let's take you're emotional with your boyfriend, your partner, your wife, your girlfriend, and you're emotional with your therapist. You're not emotional with your weightlifting. Your training is all rational thought and not emotional, right? Take the emotion out of your training. Be more practical. That's what I say. Be more practical when you're showing up.
Yes. No, I love everything that you just said there. And one thing I wanted to cover as well is you post about it on your social media now, but you stay in very good shape, in your early 50s. And a lot of people, think like, once they hit, 30, 35, like, oh, it's age. Not that, age doesn't contribute in any way, but what do you do to stay in very good shape at 52?
I take Ozempic. No, I'm just kidding, or whatever. I'm totally joking.
Yeah,
I'm totally joking.
No doubt.
I know this is going to sound crazy, but I lift weights. Like, I have been consistently weightlifting for decades. I don't even know what life is like without, training and doing that, but I've always lifted. Here are the things I feel like have helped keep me young. I've always lifted weights. I've only in the last, I would say, 12 years, I was introduced to a barbell. I never worked with a barbell before until 12 years ago. The barbell work changed my hormones in a good way. The hormone release I got from training with a barbell was like, oh my God, what is happening to my body? This is incredible. So that is a huge, for women who struggle, like when they get in their 30s and their hormones start changing and they're doing all the old bar method shit. And they're like, I have to take 40 classes a week and eat 200 calories in order to maintain my body. And I feel so frazzled. I'm like, really? You think? And so when I explain, like, okay, it's not that you moving is bad. It's just that you're not getting any hormone release in these type of workouts, right? So we kind of explain and back it up a little bit. Okay, back to myself. I don't drink alcohol. Okay. And I don't drink alcohol, not because I'm an alcoholic, but because I don't like it. I've never liked alcohol. I actually think I'm allergic to it. It makes me feel like I don't get it. I don't get alcohol. It makes me feel like shit. Absolute shit. And I'm a buzzkill because if I drink it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna feel like I'm already feeling terrible before I even started. So I don't drink. I feel like that ages a lot of people. You see people you went to high school with who were drinkers in high school, and you see them now, you're like, holy shit.
Yes.
Life was not good. So I don't drink. I don't smoke cigarettes. I did for 2 years. I was a secret smoker during my divorce in my 20s, but I don't. Truthfully, Luke, the focus of my life is being stress-free. So anything I do, any choice I make has to be in alignment with not stressing me out. And I sleep. I'm a black belt in sleep. I said that in my thing. I'm a black belt sleeper on my back. I get, 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And I'd say 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I have no children. I think that's also kept me young. I love kids, by the way. I love kids. I just don't want any of my own. Animals, being around animals, having a loving relationship, being stressed out. Look, I've been there. I was married. I've had domestic violence. I mean, I've been through the darkest of days, and I've been with my partner now. We've been together almost 13 years. He's great, and I love him so much, and he makes me laugh. And so, I think all these things are really important for people being youthful, right? Feeling younger. I mean, stress, alcohol, anger, depression. I've been through all of those things. I'm not saying, as I've gotten older, those have been my priorities, right? If it's not in alignment to my goal, I won't do it. So.
Wow. I love all those things. I mean, a lot of, like you said, just, no alcohol, like you train, you keep your stress low, you sleep well. I mean, a lot of things I know that you preach as well, but I'm so happy to hear that you shared a lot of those things. Cause as you said, you mentioned, Ozempic or some of the weight loss drugs that are super popular right now. And a lot of people are like, oh, I just need to take this and then I'll be better. But you've clearly proven that through lifestyle modifications and through just lifestyle choices in general, you can definitely stay in good, healthy shape.
Right. And here's the thing, right? I mean, as a recovering person with an eating disorder, right? I don't diet. I'm, Lisa Maximus, who I do all our elite and all of our protocol works with, she hates the word intuitive eating because, she's an actual professional powerlifter. So her macros are completely different. But, for instance, like I don't eat anything that has partially hydrated oil in it. That's just one thing that I don't do, right? And I haven't forever. I have a food plan called the SOS food plan, which is also on my website on ashleyborden.com. But my food plan that I created years ago was basically, it's SOS food plan stands for satiation of senses. So it's basically about how to go back to eating normally without binging and this up and down with food and how to have a better relationship with it, because that was my recovery myself. So, I mean, if I want to eat it, I'll eat it, but I also don't eat shit. Like I don't eat fast food. I don't drink soda. That's a big thing. We don't drink soda in our house. We have no soda. I really just drink, water. I drink water and kombucha, for that. But I'm not one of I don't track my macros. I'm not like, I think what I eat in the day on Instagram is so fucking triggering to people. And you know what? I don't believe you. I don't believe that's what you eat in a day. I think that's what looks good on Instagram. They're like, look what I eat in a day. A poke bowl, like all the things that they're making. I'm like, you're making all this shit in the day. They're like, I'm doing a stir fry for lunch, a poke bowl. Like, I mean, just I feel like it is, I don't know, maybe some people are eating what they're putting on there, but my guess is 90% of the time it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
You know, my thing, what I eat in the day, some days would be like nothing until 11, and you see a cup of coffee, and then you see like, I mean, some days I eat like, you know, I'm like, what the hell am I eating today? I need to eat better. It's like not always perfect. If anybody's telling you they're doing things perfectly, it's like they're not, or maybe they
so
are. I
true.
mean, I don't know.
So
Maybe they
true.
are, but it's hard to be perfect. You know,
Yeah.
whatever that means.
No. No. I love that, and I love, you're doing what works for you, obviously,
Yeah,
and
and you need to do what works for you. How do you eat?
I do follow a macro plan, and it does work for me, right?
See?
So, and I'm also, training for photo shoots and things like that. So it is more important, but for someone who's the average Joe, do you need to necessarily do that forever? Not necessarily, right?
And you need to ask yourself, like, do you get spun out doing this? Does this take over your life? And you, I mean, how do you feel dieting down for these things? Does it make you feel crazy, or you're okay with it?
Yeah, good question. So I personally am okay with it. However, I would say that is my personal choice. Is I really enjoy the control that I have over my transformation
Great.
and the discipline as well.
Great. And that's such a good point, because now here's what you ask yourself, like, if that makes you feel good and you know that, that's fantastic. If it makes you feel spun out, crazy, you know, doing it for the wrong reasons, it's like it'll flip on you. You know what
Yes.
I mean? So I really think people have to ask themselves, like, I could never. I used to wish I could. I could never. There's no, I would lose my mind. First of all, you would send me the diet and I would already be at Krispy Kreme donut. Like it would come in the email and I would already be binging before we even started, because you already are telling me that I can't do something. And
Yes.
I don't like that for me. You know what I mean? And but that's why fitness is subjective, and so is food.
Hmm.
Like you can't, when someone's following Luke and they're like, oh, I want to do that. And then meanwhile, they're trying to do it and they're like, I am going to kill someone. I am, you know, I mean, like it's just not for just because somebody else is doing it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And
How
you
old are
know,
you?
I'm 34.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Have you always been competing and doing that?
Yeah, good question. So I've done one, never at like a high level, but I've done one, physique show before. This is the third time I've done a photo shoot. For me, I just like it. It gives me something to work toward. For
It's
me,
great.
for me, same thing. Like, I always struggle with like body image and things growing up. So for me, I found this is something that's allowed me to, feel better. And honestly, now I mostly just do it because I love it and it's a part of who I am.
So you had body dysmorphia?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, I was always on the skinnier, thinner side and really struggled with confidence. Like,
Mm,
I never went on a date till I was 26 years old because I was really,
wow.
really like shy and socially awkward growing up. So for me, building muscle was like associated with like building confidence in myself. So
Totally.
so really, then it just became like a part of who I am because I really liked what it gave me personally. So as a
What did it
result,
give you? What did it give you?
it really gave me confidence. It allowed me to prove to myself that I was capable of more than I thought I was. Because I think like
Hmm.
growing up, I thought, I can't do this. I could never be like this person, kind of as you were talking about before. I could never be like that person. And in reality, it was all in my mind. And that's why I'm huge on mindset as well, because I think we impose these limiting beliefs on ourselves that we can't do this or can't do that, or I could never be a business owner, I could never be a trainer. That was my thing for the longest time. I can never be a trainer. I'm not ripped like them. I also have an unrelated degree. My degree is in journalism, and then
Great.
I just learned all the things. So I think that fitness in general has been a personal development tool that's allowed me to do more things in other areas of my life as well that I didn't think that I could previously do.
And you said something that's so true. It's like when you feel like you can do something like with training and the feeling the strength, right? Because it's like physical strength gives you mental strength.
Mm.
Like when you, first of all, I mean, and then what you're saying is how you're like, I didn't go on a date till I was 26 because of what you were feeling inside. Do you know how many men can relate to that, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I tell people, like, you want to niche down on who you attract. Also, with your, just a side note, with the clients, right? Like if somebody's starting, or even, I only trained women who had fucked up eating disorders when I first started, because that's all I attracted.
Sure.
I just attracted myself. Do you know what I mean? So it was a great demographic for me to work with. And you said, I couldn't be a trainer because I wasn't ripped enough. And I think there's this, there's this misconception, right, that you have to be Mr. Olympia in order to be a trainer. And I coach so many trainers who are not too, low body fat, ripped Mr. Olympia and all that, or six packs or, anything like that. Because for instance, one of what people who I work with, she's a single mom of 3. Okay. That's her, this is on her Instagram. This is everything. She has so many clients that she works with because she attracts other single mothers that also want to feel empowered and strong like she does, even though she's a single mom of 3, right?
Yes.
And that's her thing. She niches down with her stuff. And we talk about this all the time on social media and with business too. It's the same thing with training. Niche down if you first start. If you don't know what the hell you're doing, work with the only people that you're good with. They will all come to you. I got better. Look, I couldn't train professional athletes when I first started. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I mean, to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I have no idea. I was just doing what I was doing. I was working out, and my education grew as I kept on going and doing that. And that's what I love about what we do, is that we can kind of create. I mean, would you say you have a degree in journalism?
Yeah, degree in journalism. Yep.
But so you went through an education process to get it, right? I'll tell you, for me, for the longest time, just real quick, that, I had imposter syndrome for probably a couple decades because I was like, I'll never be able to pass a good certification because I'm dumb. Because when I was little, I went to a therapist when I was like, I don't remember, 7, and he told me that I had a learning disability when I was in school. He was like, you need to be in special education. And I was like, oh my God, what? So I went home and I remember I was like, I need to be in special education. I'm dumb. And by the way, that is not what special education means. This is when I was 8 years old or whatever it was. And that was my mantra, Luke, forever. I was like, I can't, even in my home, when I grew up in my home, it was very much like, well, your brother's going to college. Like, I know you want to like do your little thing, but your brother is going to college. Okay. Yes, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but like, and there was all this value in that he was going to college. What are you doing? You know what I mean? And so for me, creating my own life of the thing that works for me best is what the beauty is of working for ourselves. And I want to reiterate that to other people, which is like, create the life that works for you. For you as a trainer, we have to like where we work, what we're doing, who we're around. For the client, like your comfort and what we're doing and where we are comes before the client, because if we're not happy, we can't be the best trainers to our clients. You know what I mean? So I always say your environment that you work in has to be right for you. I mean, I've worked in so many bad environments that I know what doesn't work for me, but you have to go into different places to know what doesn't work for you.
So true.
I mean, I've trained everywhere. I've trained in every environment. I can train anywhere, but I know what I like the most now,
I love that.
Yeah, because I mean, I have severe ADHD, right? And so I was like, oh, I can't do anything. But meanwhile, yes, I could. I could create my home business the way that worked for me. And I run my business in a way that works for my brain. But I used to judge myself and I'm like, I'm sure Luke doesn't run his business like this or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm like, he went to college. What are you doing? So there's all this self-imposed judgment that, we don't need to do, because that's the beauty of running your own business. You could operate it the way that works best for you.
Yes. I love that 100%. And yeah, so many, good things said today, and I know we're coming up on time here. So I want to finish up with 2 questions. So
yeah,
the first question is, people have been listening to you now. They're probably, very interested in what you have to say. So if people want to find out more about you, what are your links? Where are the people, all the things?
Where are the things?
Yeah.
All the things?
Yep.
Okay. So all the things, like what I'm doing right now, first of all, my website, you can go on ashleyborden.com. That has everything on it, but also my Instagram is Ashley Borden Fitness. I would say that has everything also on there as well. Right now, we create, my partner, Lisa Maximus, and we just finished all of our protocols. We have it's called the squat protocol, the pull-up protocol, and the core protocol. We run these protocols that are now self-led, but they're these 4-week programs that are all goal-oriented, right? So it's like, if you've never done a pull-up before, if you did this with the pull-up protocol, you will be able to complete a pull-up at the end of it. Now, to be able to make these promises and be like, are you, what? Yeah, you can. Our programming is that good of what we do. We've run these programs many times before. So all that is on my Instagram as well, that you could do pull-up protocol, core protocol, any of those. But again, the point is that when, you know, I create stuff, and all the things that you're going to see are the things that I needed. These are all the things that I needed. These are the things that I love to do. So create the things that you needed, maybe when you were started, when people are like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know what to sell, or I don't know what to create. It's like, well, create the things that you needed when you were that person.
Yes.
You know, create it in a way that works best for you, the way that would have worked for you. Don't think about it in terms of necessarily somebody else, right? You think about what you needed, and then you put it in terms of what the client, how the client would receive it, and what I always think about as the client, you know. But I also, I come, when I say I come first, I mean that as it's anything else. Like, right, when we're on an airplane, they're like, put your oxygen mask on first and then put it on the kid, right? It's the same thing as a coach, right? Your coach has to feel good. Like, I have to feel strong. I have to be in a good place so then I can be an excellent coach and deliver to all of our clients, right? If I'm falling apart and I'm struggling, I'm also inauthentic. How am I coaching you if I'm completely, you know, inauthentic in what I'm doing with my life? So I always encourage other trainers. I'm like, just be authentic, be yourself. Even if you're going through a struggling time, everybody struggles.
Yes.
Everybody struggles. Like, even, you know, when I changed over to a new trainer, there was a period of time that I felt I didn't understand what was going on. I wasn't, you know, I changed like the way I was lifting and my positions, and I was going way heavier, and I was eating more. Just the things didn't feel normal to me. And I talked a lot about that on my Instagram and in my stories about how I was feeling, that I was like, you know, I feel off. This feels different, but I'm going to keep going because I know that it will shift over. And then, but I kept talking about it, and then finally it shifted over, and I was like, oh my God, now I see what's going on. So I just tell people, like, be your authentic self. You know what I mean? Like, people want to see authenticity. They don't want to see this fake perfection. This is not, and other, you know, other people. I mean, now any celebrities or people I train, it's all through direct message. Like, people are direct. I'm like, I don't need, this person doesn't even follow me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm training like Lena, Hetty, I think it's Hetty, Hetty. I don't know how she would pronounce her last name, but Lena from, you know, she was in Game of Thrones, right? And, you know, I didn't know Lena before, but she, I guess, was following my Instagram, and she had direct messaged me, and she's amazing. She's a great client, right? But we do this all online. You know, that's a whole nother conversation we should have about how to command online with your client. I mean, you know, if you're running groups and doing, it's a whole thing that I think a lot of trainers need help with, right? Because people commanding somebody through this way is totally different than when we're in person, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, you never know, telling the trainer, right? You never know who's watching your stuff. Just because somebody might not be following you doesn't mean that other people don't have eyes on your content, right? And what you're doing. So
true.
You should always think, if you're a trainer, right, and you're putting yourself out there, just think about, like, if I'm putting this out here, and, like, for instance, you had said before, like, companies I had worked with, I just want to specify, like Nike and all those people who I've worked with over the years, right? That are not necessarily people that I'm under contract with right now.
Sure.
I want to end with this story really quickly, because it's such a good example of this. So in my early 30s, maybe, I've been training for a while, and I was at this gym, and I remember, this is like when CrossFit wasn't around yet, and Reebok and Nike were like the two biggest brands, right? And I got clothes from Reebok, and I was like, oh my God, why had they sent me clothes? So I was like, I'm going to do a whole photo shoot. I hired this photographer. I remember her name was Tammy Kennedy, excellent photographer. She had photographed Nike actually before, and I was like, oh, I'm going to shoot with her. So, like, we went to Venice, and I like wore all these outfits, and we did running on the beach, and we did all this stuff, you know, playing volleyball, like handball, shit I never do. And I did this whole photo shoot, and I sent it to Reebok, and I was like, oh my God, they're going to love this, because, like, I'm in their clothes. This is, again, before social media. So I did this whole thing. I spent all this money, and I sent it to them, and it was nothing. Like, I heard nothing. And I was like, oh my God, I just wasted all of that. So I was kind of sitting in that. And then like 2 weeks later, I get a call from Nike. And I get a call from Nike and they say, so we just want to let you know that we have been watching all the stuff that you've been doing, which I don't really understand exactly how that was happening. Oh, I think because of my press, because at the time
Sure.
I was doing a lot of printed press.
Sure.
And they're like, we would love to put you on a contract. And I was like, fell over. Because you know, for me, that kind of significance is like keeps me going, right? I was like, what? So I was under contract with Nike for about 5 years, and they had a place called Nike Studio. I used to teach business. Luke, I just found the paper because wait, I'm going to show you this really quickly. Hold on.
Sure.
Wait, Luke, you're going to die. This was my folder with my clients from the 90s.
Yeah,
Look at it, it was 95.
Love that.
95. These are my clients. Look how I used to take their pictures.
Nice. For those listening on audio, she's holding up a book of all the clients who she's trained in a binder.
Polaroids, cut out Polaroids. Like, but again, like I just completely lost track of that. But I just wanted to say that was like, you know, I don't remember what my point was, what I was talking about with that. But again, you know, you can create whatever it is that you want and use yourself.
Yes.
That's, you know, and have a good work ethic.
I love that. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that about covers it. And yeah, we really appreciate everything that you've shared today, Ashley, all your time, all your stories of overcoming both as a child and in your career as well. And clearly you're living proof that when you put your mind to something, when you are determined, when you have a good work ethic, when you connect with the right people, you can do and achieve whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, anybody can. You know, don't let people tell you that you can't. You absolutely can. You can create it and make the life that you want for yourself.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for your time. And everyone who is listening, definitely make sure to go out and check out Ashley's stuff. And we will definitely stay connected.
Thanks, Luke. It's so nice talking to you.